Beatriz, a successful businesswoman, was known for her firm stance and unwavering focus on work. With years of experience, she led an innovative technology company and was respected for her intelligence and determination. Despite her busy schedule, Beatriz took moments to relax and think, always choosing the same cozy cafe in the city center. The place, with its peaceful atmosphere and comforting aroma of fresh coffee, was the perfect refuge for her to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. The coffee shop wasn't just a place for Beatriz to temporarily get away from the demands of the office. It was a space where she could reflect on her projects and occasionally come up with creative ideas. She enjoyed observing the people around her, finding a strange peace in the everyday activities of others. The baristas already knew her by name and knew her favorite order: a cappuccino with an extra touch of cinnamon. Everything in the cafe brought a feeling of familiarity and comfort to Beatriz. One morning, as he settled in at his usual corner table, something out of the ordinary caught his attention. A new waitress was serving customers, a young woman with long hair and expressive eyes that Beatriz had never seen before. Normally, the change of employees wouldn't affect her, but there was something about this young woman that seemed strangely familiar. Beatriz tried to focus on her work, but her eyes often strayed to the new employee. The young waitress, Clara, had a calm and friendly presence, moving with grace around the cafe space. Beatriz noticed a detail that made her stop. Clara was wearing a delicate bracelet with a unique and distinctive design. Beatriz was suddenly paralyzed. That bracelet was exactly the same as one that her sister, who had been missing for years, used to wear. Beatriz's heart raced, and she felt invaded by a mixture of emotions: surprise, hope, and deep uneasiness. Intrigued and disturbed, Beatriz began to observe Clara more closely, looking for any other clue that could confirm her suspicion. The young waitress seemed completely oblivious to the fact that she was being watched so closely. Beatriz tried to concentrate on her work, but her mind was fixed on the possibility that Clara might have some connection with her sister. The idea was absurd, but the bracelet was a detail impossible to ignore. Beatriz knew she needed to find out more. She waited until Clara was near her table and, taking advantage of the moment, started a casual conversation. He asked the young woman how long she had worked at the cafe and how she got the job. Clara, smiling and polite, replied that she had only been there a few weeks and that the job had been an unexpected blessing in her life. Beatriz noticed that Clara was open and friendly, but avoided talking about personal details. The businesswoman then decided to take a more direct approach, commenting on the beautiful bracelet that Clara wore. "This bracelet is really beautiful and unusual. May I ask where you got it?" Clara looked at the bracelet with a thoughtful expression before replying that she didn't know exactly where it came from, as she had it for as long as she could remember. The answer, although vague, made Beatriz even more curious and determined to find out more about the young woman. The conversation with Clara left Beatriz in a whirlwind of thoughts. She knew she might be grasping at a coincidence, but the bracelet's similarity to her missing sisters was disturbing. Deciding to investigate further, Beatriz left the cafe with a plan in mind. She would need to find out more about Clara's past and the origin of the bracelet. The businesswoman was about to embark on a journey that could change everything she knew about her sister's disappearance and bring answers to questions that had haunted her for years. At the end of a busy week, Beatriz decided to take a break and went to her favorite coffee shop to recharge her batteries. As soon as she entered, the welcoming atmosphere and the familiar aroma of fresh coffee enveloped her, providing an immediate feeling of comfort. However, something different caught his attention that day. Behind the counter, a new waitress was busy serving customers with a calm and friendly expression. The young woman, with long hair and a gentle smile, seemed new to the place. Beatriz, an attentive observer by nature, immediately noticed the presence of the new employee. Although the change in personnel was not something out of the ordinary, there was something about this young woman that captured Beatriz's attention in a particular way. The businesswoman tried to look away and concentrate on her thoughts and work, but she felt an inexplicable curiosity towards the waitress. Something about the young woman's appearance, perhaps the way she moved or her countenance, awoke a feeling of familiarity in Beatriz, as if she already knew her from somewhere. While waiting for her turn to order, Beatriz continued to watch the waitress. The young woman appeared composed and competent, handling customer orders with impressive calm. Beatriz found herself trying to remember if she had ever seen the young woman before, but nothing concrete came to mind. The feeling of déjà vu was strong, making her restless. When it was her turn, Beatriz approached the counter and placed her usual cappuccino order, taking the opportunity to take a closer look. It was then that Beatriz noticed something that made her heart beat faster. On the young waitress's wrist, a delicate bracelet shined, with a unique and unmistakable design. It was exactly the same as the bracelet her sister wore before she disappeared years ago. The businesswoman felt a chill run down her spine. The bracelet was a rare piece, made to order, and Beatriz was sure there could not be another like it. The sight of that object, which she hadn't seen in so long, brought back a flood of memories and emotions. The young waitress, Clara, noticed Beatriz's gaze on her wrist and, perhaps sensing interest, gave a polite smile and thanked her for the order. Beatriz, still stunned, mumbled a response before walking away from the counter, trying to process what she had just seen. She found a table in the corner and sat down, feeling a little dizzy. The thought that that bracelet could belong to his lost sister seemed impossible, but the evidence was there, clear and disturbing. While waiting for her coffee, Beatriz tried to rationalize the situation. Could it be a coincidence? Perhaps the bracelet was just a replica or had been acquired by someone else somehow. However, the resemblance was so perfect that she couldn't ignore the possibility of a real connection. Beatriz knew she couldn't just let this go. The need to find out more about the young waitress and how she came to possess that bracelet became an urgent priority. When Clara brought Beatriz's coffee to the table, the businesswoman took the opportunity to start a conversation. She praised the bracelet, mentioning how beautiful and unusual the design was. Clara, surprised, smiled and thanked him, explaining that the bracelet had always been one of her favorite pieces, but without giving many details. Beatriz realized that she needed to be careful not to scare the young woman with too direct questions. She said goodbye politely, but left the cafe with a new mission. Clara's appearance and the discovery of the bracelet had awakened something deep in Beatriz. She was determined to find out more about the young girl and possibly solve the mystery that had tormented her for so long. As she walked back to the office, Beatriz knew that from that moment on, her peaceful routine at the coffee shop would never be the same. She was about to embark on a journey that could bring answers about her sister's fate, answers she didn't even know she was still searching for. While waiting for her cappuccino, Beatriz, still immersed in thoughts about the new waitress, noticed something that made her stop suddenly. On the young woman's wrist was a delicate bracelet, shining under the cafeteria lights. Beatriz felt her heart accelerate. The bracelet had a unique and unmistakable design, something she would recognize anywhere. It was identical to the one her sister wore before she mysteriously disappeared years ago. The sight of that accessory, seemingly insignificant to anyone else, brought back a flood of emotions and memories that Beatriz thought she had left behind. The bracelet wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a special gift that Beatriz had given her sister for a birthday, with a deep meaning for both of them. That object represented an unbreakable bond between the two, and seeing it there, on a stranger's wrist, was surreal and disturbing. Beatriz felt a mix of hope and anguish. Could it just be a coincidence? Or did that young woman have some connection to her missing sister? She needed to find out the truth. Deciding to investigate discreetly, Beatriz waited for the right moment to approach the young waitress. Clara, as she had seen from her badge, was busy serving other customers, but Beatriz remained patient. When Clara finally brought her order, Beatriz took the opportunity to start a casual conversation. "What a pretty bracelet," she commented, trying to keep her voice calm and unconcerned. "Where did you get it?" Clara, a little surprised by the question, smiled politely and looked at her wrist. "Thank you," Clara replied, in a soft voice. "I've had this bracelet for a long time, as long as I can remember. It was a gift, but I don't know much about its origin." Clara's answer left Beatriz even more intrigued. The businesswoman disguised her growing anxiety with a smile, thanking her and leaving the matter aside for now. But inside, Beatriz was in turmoil. The bracelet was definitely unique, and the fact that Clara didn't know much about its origin only added to the mystery. Beatriz retreated to a nearby table, trying to process the conversation. The idea that Clara might have some connection to her lost sister seemed increasingly possible, but at the same time, absurd. She considered all the possibilities, from the girl acquiring the bracelet by chance to the possibility that Clara was somehow linked to her sister's disappearance. Beatriz knew she needed more information before reaching any conclusions. In the following days, Beatriz continued to frequent the cafe, taking every opportunity to observe and talk to Clara. She began to notice more details about the young girl, trying to find any physical or behavioral similarities that could indicate a family connection. Each interaction was an opportunity to learn more, but also a test of his patience and ability to remain calm. Beatriz knew she needed to be careful not to scare Clara or arouse suspicion. Meanwhile, Beatriz began to do some discreet investigations of her own. She searched through adoption records, old news reports, and any other clues that might help solve the mystery of the bracelet. Each new discovery, or lack thereof, fueled his determination. Beatriz was increasingly convinced that Clara was the key to understanding what had happened to her sister. But the question of how to approach this without causing alarm or pain was delicate. The possibility of finally getting answers about her sister's disappearance, something that haunted Beatriz for years, was within her reach. But she knew she needed to tread carefully. The bracelet, although a clear sign, was not enough evidence to jump to conclusions. Beatriz planned a more direct approach with Clara, but knew she needed to choose the right moment and the right words to avoid scaring her or closing any communication doors. So, as the weeks passed, Beatriz prepared for the definitive conversation that could change everything. She felt like she was on the verge of an important revelation, one that could finally give her peace or open up a new series of questions. Either way, she was determined to discover the truth about Clara and the connection to her sister. The bracelet, which now seemed like a link between the past and the present, was a symbol of renewed hope and a tireless search for answers. Beatriz, determined to find out more about the young waitress, decided that she needed a careful approach to obtain the necessary information. On her next visit to the coffee shop, she prepared herself for a deeper conversation, disguised as a simple casual chat. He chose a table strategically close to the counter, where Clara was serving, and waited for the right moment to start the dialogue. When Clara approached to take Beatriz's order, the businesswoman greeted her with a warm smile. "You're always so excited and smiling. It's rare to find someone who enjoys their work so much," commented Beatriz, trying to establish a friendly connection. Clara, a little surprised, returned the smile and thanked him. "Thanks, I really like it here. The people are great, and it's a welcoming place to work." The answer was simple, but Beatriz saw the opportunity to deepen the conversation. Taking advantage of the moment, Beatriz made a complimentary remark about Clara's bracelet. "This bracelet is very beautiful. Seems to have a unique design. Did you get it from someone special?" Clara looked at her wrist, a little surprised by the interest, and responded with a smile. "Ah, yes, thank you. I've always had this bracelet, but I don't know much about its origins. I think it was a gift when I was younger." Beatriz, keeping her tone casual, continued, "It's a rare piece. It reminds me of something someone close to me had." Clara looked slightly uncomfortable, but kept her smile. Beatriz realized that she couldn't press too hard at that moment, so she changed the topic of conversation to something lighter. "Are you from around town?" he asked, trying to find out more about Clara's life. The young woman responded that she had recently moved to the city, looking for new job opportunities, and that she was adapting well to the new environment. Beatriz made a mental note of the information, feeling that she was beginning to understand a little more about the young woman. As Clara walked away to serve another customer, Beatriz reflected on the conversation. Clara's answer about the bracelet didn't offer many clues, but the fact that she didn't know its origin increased Beatriz's suspicions. She wondered if the bracelet could have been purchased or given in another way, perhaps even related to her sister's disappearance. The pieces of the puzzle were still falling into place, and Beatriz knew she needed more information before making any conclusions. In the following days, Beatriz continued to frequent the cafe, keeping her interactions with Clara friendly and casual. Each conversation, although brief, helped Beatriz build a clearer profile of the young woman. Clara mentioned that she didn't have many close family members and that she was trying to establish an independent life in the city. This only added to the mystery surrounding it and the story behind the bracelet. Beatriz began to consider other ways to discreetly investigate, perhaps speaking to other employees or seeking information from public records. Beatriz also began to prepare herself emotionally for the possibility of discovering difficult truths. If Clara truly had some connection to her sister, it could reopen old wounds or bring new complications. She needed to be ready to deal with any outcome, whether positive or negative. Beatriz knew she was getting involved in something potentially painful, but the search for answers about her sister was something she couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, Clara, although apparently oblivious to the real reason for Beatriz's questions, began to show signs of curiosity. She seemed to enjoy conversations with Beatriz, perhaps seeing her as a friendly or even maternal figure. For Beatriz, this was a positive sign. It meant Clara might be more open to sharing more about her life in the future. With each encounter, Beatriz felt she was getting closer to the truth, but she knew she needed to be patient and cautious. She was on a journey that required sensitivity and, above all, courage to face whatever was coming. On a quiet afternoon at the cafe, Beatriz and Clara finally had the opportunity to talk more calmly. Beatriz, always subtle, found a suitable moment to deepen the conversation. "Clara, you were such a positive and hard-working person. What was your life like before coming here?" asked Beatriz with genuine interest. Clara, looking comfortable and confident with Beatriz, gave a shy smile before beginning to share her story. Clara said that her childhood was not easy. She mentioned that she did not know her biological family and that, from a young age, she went through several foster homes. "I always felt like some kind of nomad," Clara said with a soft laugh, trying to ease the seriousness of the matter. "I never stayed in one place for long, but I always tried to adapt and learn from each experience." Beatriz, listening attentively, felt her heart sink. Clara's story resonated deeply with her concerns about her missing sister. Continuing, Clara explained that when she turned 18, she decided to leave the foster care system and seek her own independence. She talked about the challenges of living on your own, but also about the freedom of finally being able to make your own decisions. Beatriz noticed the strength and resilience in the young woman, admiring how she had faced so many difficulties with a positive attitude. However, Clara's story also raised many questions. The businesswoman began to suspect that there was something more behind Clara's past, something that she herself might not have known. Beatriz tried to delve deeper into the topic of the bracelet again, asking if Clara had any special memories related to the object or if she knew who could have given it to her. Clara, thoughtfully, said that the bracelet was one of her few constant belongings, something that always accompanied her from home to home. "I don't know exactly where it came from, but I always felt like it was important to me. Maybe it was a gift from someone early in my life, but I really don't know." The answer, although vague, made Beatriz feel a mixture of hope and anxiety. The lack of clarity about the bracelet's origin only increased the possibility of a connection to his sister. As Clara talked about her teenage years, Beatriz began to mentally draw parallels with her sister's life. The dates and details weren't clear enough to make a definitive connection, but Beatriz couldn't ignore the coincidences. The lack of information about Clara's biological parents, the fact that she was raised in several foster homes, and now, the bracelet. Everything seemed to line up in a way that Beatriz couldn't help but notice. Beatriz was aware that she might be jumping the gun, seeing connections where there might otherwise be none. But the similarity of the bracelet and the absence of clear information about Clara's past were too intriguing to ignore. The businesswoman knew she needed more information and, possibly, concrete evidence before making any conclusions. Still, she felt more determined than ever to help Clara discover more about her roots, even if it meant reopening old wounds. The conversation continued, with Clara talking about her hopes and dreams for the future. She mentioned that she would like to find her real family someday, but that she was afraid of what she might find out. Beatriz, understanding these feelings, offered emotional support, saying that she herself knew how important it was to understand one's past. "I think we all want to know where we came from, don't we?" said Beatrice, trying to reassure Clara. "And who knows, maybe destiny has some good surprises in store for us." Clara's story, although full of uncertainties, had created a bond between the two women. Beatrice felt a strong desire to protect Clara and, at the same time, discover the truth. She knew the road ahead could be difficult, but she was prepared to face any challenge. The possibility of finding his sister, or at least finding out what had happened to her, was closer than ever. With this new motivation, Beatrice left the cafe with a clear plan. She would continue the search for answers, supporting Clara on her own journey of personal discovery. Determined to find out more about Clara and the possible connection to her missing sister, Beatrice decided to start a private investigation. Using her personal resources and a network of influential contacts, she began to collect information about the young woman's past. The businesswoman knew that the truth could be hidden in forgotten or poorly documented details, and was ready to follow any clues that emerged. Beatrice began searching for Clara's adoption records. She contacted specialist lawyers and used social welfare connections to gain access to confidential files. The process was slow and complicated, but Beatrice was determined. She needed to know if there were any inconsistencies in the documents or anything that might indicate a connection to her own family. Each revised document increased his hope and, at the same time, his fear of discovering a painful truth. During her investigation, Beatrice found some information that left her intrigued. There were gaps in Clara's records, especially in the early years of her life. The official documents mentioned that Clara had been found abandoned as a baby, without any identification. This meant there was no way to trace his biological parents or confirm his origins. Beatrice felt a mix of frustration and hope. If Clara didn't have a documented history, there was a chance that she could actually be her sister. To further deepen the investigation, Beatrice hired a private detective. The professional, experienced in adoption and disappearance cases, began looking for additional clues. They searched records from hospitals, orphanages, and any other institutions that might have information about missing or abandoned children when Clara was a baby. The idea was to find some connection, however tenuous, with the disappearance of Beatrice's sister. While the detective advanced with the investigation, Beatrice also made a point of observing Clara more closely. She noticed little things, the way Clara gestured, her facial expressions, even her food and music preferences. Beatrice found herself comparing these observations with her sister's memories. The similarity wasn't just in the bracelet. There was something more, a kind of familiarity that Beatrice couldn't fully explain. This further increased his determination to discover the truth. Days passed and the detective returned with a significant discovery. He found records of a missing child around the same time Clara was found. The description of the child, including details about the bracelet, matched exactly what Beatrice remembered about her sister. However, without hard evidence like a DNA test, this link was still a theory. Beatrice felt a whirlwind of emotions. Hope of finally finding her sister and fear of being mistaken or discovering a painful truth. Beatrice knew she needed to talk to Clara about these discoveries, but she was afraid of how the young woman would react. The idea of bringing to light Clara's dark past, which she possibly didn't even know, was delicate. Beatrice needed a careful and sensitive approach, ensuring Clara felt supported and understood, regardless of the outcome. The next step would be the most difficult, confronting Clara with the possibility that she was her lost sister, or at least part of a story that they both needed to resolve. As she prepared for this crucial conversation, Beatrice reflected on what she discovered and what it meant for her and Clara. The businesswoman was aware that this investigation could change everything, not just for her, but also for the young waitress. There was a mixture of anxiety and anticipation in the air, and Beatrice knew that, regardless of the outcome, the important thing was to bring clarity and, possibly, a new beginning for both of them. With a heavy but determined heart, she prepared for her next meeting with Clara, where she would finally share what she had discovered. Beatrice knew that the time to confront Clara had arrived. After collecting so many clues and information, it was impossible to ignore the possibility that the young woman could be her missing sister or, at least, have some connection to her. With her heart racing, Beatrice headed to the cafe, determined to have a frank and delicate conversation with Clara. When he arrived, he found the young woman at the counter, as usual, and asked to speak to her privately after work. Clara, surprised by the request, agreed, although she seemed a little nervous. They sat at a quiet table, away from the prying eyes of the other customers. Beatrice began the conversation by thanking Clara for being willing to listen to her and explained that she had something very important to discuss. "I know this may seem strange, but I need to talk about the bracelet you wear," Beatrice began with a serious but kind expression. Clara looked at her wrist, confused, without understanding what Beatrice was getting at. Beatrice took a deep breath and continued, "This bracelet, it is identical to one my sister wore. My sister disappeared many years ago, and we have never heard from her since. When I saw the bracelet, I was surprised and began to think about the possibility of a connection." Clara, visibly surprised, frowned and replied, "I really don't know where that bracelet came from. I've always had it with me, but I don't know my biological family, so I can't say where it came from." The businesswoman then shared her sister's story, explaining how she disappeared and how the bracelet was a unique, custom-made piece. "I know this must be confusing for you, but I need to know more about your past," Beatrice said, trying to remain calm as the tension rose. Clara, although clearly shaken, was willing to help. She revealed that she always knew she had been found in a park when she was a baby, without identification. "They told me that I was abandoned, but I don't know anything more about my story," added Clara, with an expression of sadness and uncertainty. Beatrice felt a mix of emotions upon hearing this. Clara's story matched what she knew about her sister's disappearance. However, without concrete evidence, there was still a long way to go. "Clara, I would like to investigate this further. Maybe we can find answers for both of us. I don't want to impose anything, but I believe this could be important for both of us," suggested Beatrice, feeling a wave of hope and anxiety. Clara, still confused by the situation, reluctantly agreed to continue the search for answers. She confessed that she always had an empty feeling about her past and that, despite her fear, she wanted to know the truth. The two women discussed next steps, including the possibility of taking a DNA test to confirm or rule out a familial relationship. Clara was understandably nervous, but Beatrice's kindness and sincerity helped her feel a little more comfortable with the idea. Beatrice assured Clara that, regardless of the outcome, she was not alone. The businesswoman promised to support Clara, whatever the truth, and was ready to face any outcome. "If you were my sister, it would change my life. But even if you weren't, I feel a connection with you and I want to help in any way I can," Beatrice said, with an encouraging smile. Clara, touched by Beatrice's words, thanked her and expressed her own desire to find closure to the uncertainties in her life. With a plan in place, Beatrice and Clara left the cafe with mixed feelings of hope and apprehension. The reality check had brought more questions than answers, but it had also opened the door to a journey of discovery and potential reconciliation. Both knew the road ahead could be difficult, but they were determined to move forward. Beatrice, with new determination, was ready to discover the truth about Clara and possibly find her lost sister. Determined to uncover the truth, Beatrice and Clara joined forces to investigate Clara's past and her possible connection to Beatrice's missing sister. The first step in this journey was to find documents and records that could provide crucial clues. Beatrice used her network of contacts and personal resources to access adoption records, orphanage and hospital files. Clara, although anxious and a little apprehensive, was willing to explore all possible paths to discover her true identity. The two women spent hours going through old documents. They discovered that Clara was found in a park, abandoned, without any identification. This detail seemed to fit with the period in which Beatrice's sister disappeared, which raised both of their hopes. However, the path to the truth was far from direct. Much information was missing or inconsistent, suggesting the possibility of administrative errors or even a cover-up. While digging deeper, Beatrice and Clara found an adoption report that raised new suspicions. The document indicated that Clara had initially been registered under a different name and that her adoption went through several bureaucratic irregularities. This could indicate a number of things, from simple mistakes to a more sinister situation, like a kidnapping. The fear of encountering unpleasant answers did not stop the two from continuing. On the contrary, each new discovery strengthened his determination to get to the bottom of the matter. Beatrice also decided to visit the orphanage where Clara spent part of her childhood, hoping to find staff who still remembered her. The visit revealed that many records had been lost or destroyed over the years, but a former employee vaguely remembered Clara as a quiet, introspective child. He mentioned that Clara's story always seemed strange, as she was one of the few children who never had information about her biological parents. This report reinforced the idea that Clara could have a more complex story than initially thought. In parallel, Beatrice and Clara explored the possibility of carrying out a DNA test. Beatrice was eager to confirm or rule out any biological relationship, but knew this could be emotionally intense for both of them. Clara, for her part, was hesitant, fearing what the truth could mean for her identity and future. However, after much consideration, Clara agreed that the test was a necessary step in solving the mystery of her origin. While waiting for the results of the DNA test, Beatrice and Clara continued to investigate other leads. They interviewed Beatrice's former co-workers and revisited places associated with Beatrice's sister's disappearance. Each interview and visit brought more snippets of information, but also added to the mystery. It was like putting together a puzzle with missing pieces. Each new discovery seemed to open more questions than answers. During this process, Beatrice and Clara developed a deeper connection. They began to see each other as a friend and ally, as well as a possible family connection. The two shared fears, hopes, and the difficulties of this emotional journey. Clara, who initially felt lost and rootless, began to find a sense of belonging, regardless of the final outcome of the investigation. Beatrice, in turn, found comfort in Clara's company and the possibility of finally getting answers to her sister's disappearance. As time passed, the search for answers became more than just finding the truth about Clara's past, or the whereabouts of Beatrice's sister. It became a journey of self-discovery for both of them, as they faced their fears and hopes. The DNA test was about to reveal a crucial truth, and they both braced themselves for whatever result might come. Beatrice and Clara knew that, no matter what happened, they were on this journey together and were willing to face the truth, whatever it was. After weeks of intense investigation and anxious waiting for DNA test results, the moment of final revelation has finally arrived. Beatrice and Clara met in a quiet place, prepared to face whatever truth was about to be revealed. The air was thick with expectation and nervousness. Beatrice held the envelope with the results, feeling the weight of the moment. She knew that no matter what the test revealed, their lives were about to change forever. With shaking hands, Beatrice opened the envelope and began to read the results. As her eyes scanned the text, she felt a wave of conflicting emotions: surprise, relief, disbelief. The results confirmed that Clara was, in fact, Beatrice's missing sister. The bracelet, which initially seemed like just a detail, had turned out to be a crucial piece in the puzzle of their lives. Beatrice could hardly believe it. The young woman she had met by chance in the cafe was her sister, lost so many years ago. Clara, upon hearing the news, was in a state of shock. She had always felt disconnected from her past, but now she was faced with a truth that completely changed her life. The mix of emotions, joy at finding her biological family and sadness at lost time, was overwhelming. Beatrice immediately hugged Clara, tears streaming from her eyes. The two sisters, separated for so long, were now reunited, with a story that was both heartbreaking and redemptive. As the two women processed the news, they began discussing what had happened. Beatrice explained that the bracelet was a unique piece, a special gift she had given to her sister. The DNA confirmation was just the final proof of a truth that, in some way, both of them already felt in their hearts. Clara, in turn, shared her experiences in foster care and how she always felt there was something missing in her life. Now, everything started to make sense. Beatrice and Clara also discussed the implications of this discovery. They would need to tell their family and face the complex emotions of being sisters who found each other after so many years. Beatrice felt guilty for not having found Clara sooner, but Clara consoled her, saying that the important thing was that they were together now. Both agreed that the next step was to rebuild their relationship and make up for lost time. The revelation that Clara was her sister brought a new perspective to both of them. They began to plan their future together, discussing how they would integrate their lives and stories. Beatrice wanted Clara to meet her family and friends, while Clara was eager to learn more about her origins and heritage. The pain of the past could not be erased, but they were determined to create new memories and strengthen their bonds. The journey of discovery also brought to light many questions about Clara's past and what had happened after her disappearance. Beatrice and Clara were determined to investigate deeper, to understand the circumstances that led to the separation. There were still many unanswered questions, and both were willing to face any challenges to find those answers. As they reflected on everything they had been through, Beatrice and Clara realized that the bracelet, the small object that started this journey, was a symbol of their unbreakable connection. The unexpected reunion brought joy and a sense of completeness that both had been looking for years. Now, together, they were ready to face the future with courage and determination, knowing that, despite all adversity, they had found each other. Now, with the confirmation that Clara was her lost sister, Beatrice felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The two women were united by a rediscovered family bond, and with that came the promise of a new beginning. They decided that the first thing to do would be to tell the family about the discovery and begin the process of integrating Clara into everyone's lives. There were many emotions to process and issues to discuss, but the main thing was the feeling of hope they both shared. Beatrice and Clara organized a family meeting to share the news. It was an emotional and, at the same time, tense moment. Beatrice's family members were surprised and moved by the discovery. The acceptance and love with which Clara was received gave everyone a feeling of relief and happiness. Clara, although nervous, felt welcomed and began to see her new family as a safe haven. It was a moment of healing for everyone, especially for Beatrice, who had carried the burden of loss for so long. As the weeks went by, Beatrice and Clara began to get to know each other better. They shared stories of their lives, laughed together, and sometimes cried over lost memories. Beatrice discovered in Clara a strong and resilient person who had faced many challenges with grace and courage. Clara, in turn, admired Beatrice for her determination to find the truth and for her unconditional love. They began to build new memories and plan for the future with enthusiasm. Clara's life changed in many ways. She moved closer to Beatrice, making it easier to build a stronger bond. The two sisters began to spend more time together, doing activities they enjoyed and rediscovering the pleasure of each other's company. Clara also began to explore her roots, learning more about her family history and meeting other relatives. A sense of belonging that she had never experienced before was finally coming to fruition. Meanwhile, Beatrice found a new perspective on her life. Clara's discovery gave him a sense of renewed purpose. She dedicated herself to supporting Clara in the transition to her new life and helping her family understand and accept the changes. Beatrice also reflected on the power of perseverance and love, realizing that these elements were fundamental in bringing Clara back to her. It was a moment of deep gratitude and realization. Together, Beatrice and Clara decided to further investigate the past and the circumstances that led to their separation. It was important for both of them to understand what had happened and, if possible, bring justice to the situation. They committed to finding answers and helping other families who might be going through similar situations. This new purpose gave them a common cause and a goal that transcended their own personal history. Over time, the story of Beatrice and Clara became an inspiring example of resilience and love. They began sharing their experience at events and with support groups, helping others find the courage to face their own challenges. The sisters' journey was a testament that even in the most difficult circumstances, hope and determination can lead to happy outcomes. Their reunion became a celebration of life and the power of family ties. The new beginning for Beatrice and Clara was not just about rebuilding a relationship, but also about creating a future full of possibilities. They were ready to face whatever came their way, confident that together they could overcome any obstacle. Their story, marked by challenges and discoveries, now focused on union, love and hope for a better tomorrow. Together, Beatrice and Clara were ready to write a new chapter of their lives, knowing that no matter what the future brought, they would always have each other.